You spend a lot of time designing, building, and planting your garden beds, but how much of that time do you devote to designing and building the edges, the borders? These can be very important parts of your garden bed and can make a big difference in how they look. Join me today as I share with you some projects of garden edging, from very easy to a little more expert. Hi, I'm Gardener Scott, and my garden consists of many different areas with many different purposes. There are pathways running throughout, and in most of them I have a clearly defined edge within and around the gardens. Now, this area right here is my pollinator garden. I have a number of different flowers, some fruit trees, some grasses. It's all designed to attract beneficial insects and to give me a place to enjoy, to look, to see the pretty flowers and the life that is so abundant in my garden. But I don't want myself and anyone else walking through these plants unnecessarily. So I've set up a very simple edging system. I have a single path that runs through this garden area to keep me, and for the most part my dogs, contained within this space and not knocking down the flowers. But there's still plenty of space for the birds and all the other life to enter the garden. The way I've done that is by identifying this very clearly to anyone who looks at it, including the dogs, as a pathway. I've lined the edge between the garden and the path with logs. These are just weathered old branches from a tree I cut down years ago, and they do a great job defining the space on both sides. They have a rustic look that matches the naturalized setting that they are so important at defining. I use a lot of wood throughout my garden as edging. First off, it's easy to define an edge with an old log. When I planted this raspberry patch, that's what I did. I just laid an old log to differentiate between the pathway and the plants. And because this is an informal setting, an informal edge like a log makes a lot of sense. I also like using wood like this because it's free. For many of us, if you can cut some branches off your tree or find a source for some old logs, you can create an entire bed area for very little expense and very little effort. The entire edging on a pathway does not need to be the same material. I have this bed of asparagus right here. Well, the edge of the bed is an edge for the pathway. In this area where I have some plants like gooseberries and currants and comfrey growing, I went with the same basic idea of a wooden edge, but this time it's not quite so rustic. I changed things up when I created the edging for this herb bed. I still used the logs, but this time I cut them into small pieces and set them vertically in the ground, intentionally having an irregular pattern where some are tall, some are short, some are fat, some are thin. And again, it gives a nice rustic setting to the plants that are growing here. You don't see the edging as much as you see the plants, but when you stop and observe the whole space, you can look at it and say, oh, I like that. That's the way I like to set up my edging. I followed the same theme for these beds that I recently completed. This is a border bed between my pollinator garden and the central pathway. And I wanted to highlight plants like daylilies, among others that have yet to be planted. Because it still has the rustic feel of the nature here, I wanted the same vertical log edging. The process for building this edge is more complicated than just laying a log in place. first, I had to cut the logs into individual pieces, and my pieces are between 8 and 12 inches long. Then I dug a trench that outlined the general area where I was going to place the vertical pieces as I was creating the edging. And then one by one, I dug out or filled in as necessary to put these pieces within the trench. And now that it's all done, I love it. But this section just here did take a couple days. There's a lot of cutting, a lot of individual setting, but it's here now. And I like the way it looks. This year I began working on this area, a stone patio area of the garden. And I wanted a central entrance point. So again, to help define the entrance, I needed some edging, because I'm going to be putting some plants along the edge, and I want to direct the traffic to my fire pit and to this stone patio area. Because the stone patio creates a more formal setting, I felt this edging needed to be more formal. Not the rustic wood, but something that would complement the stone. And then I saw these and realized they were perfect. The shape and the color of this concrete edging that comes in individual segments that are about 16 inches long very closely mimics the shape and the color of the wood edging on the other side of this path. I like that the edging doesn't need to be the same on each edge of a path or on every side of a garden. It can be informal and rustic, and at the same time as being a little more formal and a little more solid. I tie them together with the shape and the color, but that's not necessary either. You could go with different colors and different shapes to edge a single pathway. The way I constructed this is very similar to the way I did this side. I dug a trench to define where the edge was going to go. Now in this case, because I was working with the solid pieces, I then filled in the trench with sand so that I could level and compact the entire area as I laid the individual pieces. At some point, I'll add plants in this area, creating another border bed. You have a few options when you put your plants and your edging in place. You can put the edging in place first and then place the bed, or like I did on this side, place the bed first and then place the edging. Eventually, I'll have a more formal pathway here. Right now, it's just some native plants, but I'm planning to fill this in with some crushed rock to add some color and to more clearly define the pathway. But the edging is going to stay. It's also training me and everybody who comes to the garden until I have these plants in place to not step over and instead to go through the opening. The design and constructing of this central gazebo area of my garden has been years in the making. I put these plants in place before any edging and before even the gazebo was built. These plants have been in the ground for almost 5 years now, and the gazebo is only 2 years old. And this year, I completed the edging. The first edging project was to create these long rectangular beds right next to all the pavers within this gazebo area, and then to put some plants in place. This is the most formal area of my garden, so the edging needs to reflect that formality. That's why I went with the concrete blocks and these bricks to create a more permanent edge and to also create an edge that had that formality, that matches the gazebo and this entire setting. This hard concrete edge now clearly defines the growing spaces. It acts to keep the mulch in the beds It acts to keep people out of the beds. And I think it's basically a beautiful frame around my central sitting area. This edging wasn't particularly difficult to put in place, but it did take a lot of time and a lot of effort. There's a lot of lifting, and even though this area is relatively flat, it's not level. So I had to bring in a lot of sand and measure each brick individually to make sure not only that it lined up, but that it was level and compacted into the sand underneath. I'll continue to add new areas within my garden, new beds, and like this one right here, an entire new garden. This will be my walled garden once I complete the fences that will surround it. The fences will act as a form of edging, clearly defining the start of a garden from the other garden areas. But within this space, I'll have more beds and more opportunities to try different types of edging. I primarily focus on the stone and the wood, but metal is also an option. You can also use glass. There are so many variables when you create your edging that the sky's the limit. Just pick what you like to look at and what you think is going to be easy to install, and then figure out where the edge needs to be. What are you separating? And go ahead and put it in place. It's fun, and when it's done, I love standing back and just looking at it, saying, I did that. I designed it, I built it, and now it's something that I can take great pride in. If you want to see more of some of the projects I've done in the garden, go ahead and watch one of these videos next. I'm Gardener Scott. Enjoy gardening.